On, can everyone hear me? All right, thank you so much. Firstly, I think I'm a very lucky girl today because I've got this amazing audience as well as such a lot of diversity on this panel. One of the things panelists always do before they get onto a big stage like this is have a chat in what's called the speaker's lounge. And one of the really big things that came out of the chat that we had over here is that this panel has a great sense of humor, by the way. And we're definitely going to try to push that through. And one thing I want to make clear before we start this discussion is that I think all of us, many of us, read our business papers, we look at reports, we look at earnings. We're all familiar with how businesses work. So this is not going to be a quiz in terms of the diversification of RIL into the next orbit or get really into your projections for growth so far. I want to have a very honest discussion about how you are looking at curating your client base and how you're going to be maintaining excellence in doing that, and what it is that you're really going to be getting out of this so-called demographic dividend that we keep discussing in India. I'm, in fact, going to start with the person to whom I've been dying to say this. Batter is your bread and butter. Okay, it took me one day to be able to perfect saying that. Batter is your bread and butter, okay? Mustafa, I want to come to you first. I think it's quite brilliant that you had the guts to take on something as personal as the vada mix perfect batter, okay? I give you an example of my mother who thinks that the chutney in her house is the best. She'll judge all of you from the chutney in your house, and there's no way any of us in this family would have the guts to be able to make that a mass product and to ensure quality, excellence, and delivery. Where are you now in your business when it comes to the next stage?
That is a googly. Can you hear me? I thought you were going to start with Ashish.
No, first, what is my job? I mean, this is all about disruption, right? I mean, let's start with disrupting from the moderator.
So if you look at India, there are two kinds of people.
Yeah.
There are people who cannot afford to eat breakfast. And then there are people like you and me who do not have time to eat breakfast. We were actually trying to solve the second problem. We identified there is a gap, and we kept our products fresh and natural and free from chemicals and preservatives. We played in a very focused segment. We didn't start selling idli on the street. We sold idli batter. A homemaker picks up a pack of idli batter, cooks steaming idli, and serve it hot as a fluffy idli to the family.
Sure.
And they have breakfast together. If idli comes out well, she gets the credit, not me. But if for some reason, if dosa is not crispy, blame goes to me, brand ID.
You're a lucky man.
That's what we did.
So, no, I think what I'm asking you is because what's interesting for me is, look, I've got Ashish here, I've got Akash right here. Ashish, because he's just had that round of funding, first question everyone's going to have is that what are you going to do with those funds and what is next for your business, okay? Two reasons why we're asking that is obviously because all of us will always ask how the funds will be deployed, how will you grow, but curation, again, is becoming a very big part in what you do. Book My Show is about convenience. It's about the kind of experiences that you're delivering. Are you going to be delivering those experiences curated by yourselves? I mean, are you going to actually now, what is the next stage in the businesses and the demands that you're seeing there?
Since we're on this trail of honesty, firstly,
yes,
let me be honest that the numbers that you all put out there, you all lowballed me. Our number of customers are many more than what was said. So let's set the record straight.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two is, look, I believe more companies die out of indigestion than starvation. The moment you get a lot of funding, people go cuckoo. They start traveling business class, staying in 5 stars. I think businesses need to be built over 15, 20, 25, 30-year horizons. Everybody wants to get rich quick. Everybody talks about paper tigers, about becoming a unicorn. A unicorn is a mythical animal that doesn't exist.
That's right.
I haven't seen one. So people ask me, "Arey, kuch to animal bolo, you're some animal." So I say, I'm a cockroach. I
Wonderful.
survive.
Good morning, guys. We've gone from batter breakfast to cockroaches. Exactly the way you want.
So curation, no curation, competition, I can't control the competition. I can focus on the quality of my input. So they say cockroach. So I said, I can survive a nuclear holocaust or a microwave oven. You can keep cleaning it as much, they still keep coming out.
Lovely.
Then they said, nahi, wo to insect hai. So I said, okay, I'm a mongrel. I fight on the street every day. If there's a pack of dogs, I run. If somebody feeds you, you eat. Otherwise, you keep fighting the street battle. There's a battle out there. There's a war out there. We are bereft of good ideas. There's too much money chasing too few ideas. And therefore, there's too much competition with very little business. So when you talk about curation and all of that, I think our first phase of the journey was in the road building process. You can't collect toll till you build the road. So we built the ticketing platform, got the consumers, and we've got people used to a certain habit, at least a part of that consumer base. And now it's about giving experiences to consumers like Ed Sheeran. We just announced Cirque du Soleil.
Sure.
We're doing Disney's Aladdin, but there's a Aladdin and the genie speak to each other in Hindi.
Right.
So we've Indianized it. So now it's about creating experiences to pull people out of home.
Okay.
And also to give them experiences which they haven't experienced to escape from what they would normally.
And let me stop you there, because Ashish, I'd like to bring up a point. We keep talking about demographic dividend and how there's this huge market out there for growth, and this is what's going to be driving businesses forward. But tell me, give me an honest answer. Out of all of you, who do you think is the person who's really going to be taking that demographic dividend forward and really catering to the kind of numbers that are out there?
Akash.
That's him. Mr. Ambani is there, right there.
Because if you look at India, and he should follow on with this comment, look, we keep talking about a 1.3 billion market. India is not a 1.3 billion market. We have so many nuances within our 1.3 billion, and Akash, you can add on. Top 10% of this country controls 80% of the wealth. The bottom 40% controls 5%. All of us are trying to sell to this long tail, which doesn't exist today. But a business like Jio and Akash can actually cater to a large number.
So you're pointing to two things, which is the realities of the numbers that are out there and how businesses should be looking at them. And Akash, I'm going to now finally come to you on this. And the reason I kept this last is because the kind of scale at which you guys are operating and the speed at which you're operating, I'm not even getting into the kind of transformations that's taking place in RIL. Let's just focus specifically on what you are doing here. One of the challenges I'm assuming you will have is to maintain quality while you're trying to reach out to new clients and new client bases. And you will face a lot of criticism as well when it comes to that. How are you planning on coping with that? And I'm not talking about what we see on Twitter every morning. I'm talking about seriously how you're dealing with the kind of problems. Scaling is it's not an issue for you. I mean, you're pretty much, numbers I don't think are the issue. How are you going to address that?
So let me first start up and say that a real focus about Jio is just not giving connectivity to 1.3 billion Indians, but it's also to empower people like Ashish to build new platforms and keep on pushing the edge of innovation so that more and more services can come to these 1.3 billion Indians. When it really comes, I firmly believe that if you have to do innovation at a large scale, it comes from at a grassroots level. I mean, that's the DNA of Reliance. That's what we've been doing for the last 4 decades. And now it comes to Jio. So when it comes to really pushing the scale aspect of it, today Jio covers 91% of living population of India. And that'll go to 99% in the coming years or months. Now, when you talk about the quality efficiencies and how do we make sure, I think this 4th industrial revolution that I spoke about on my keynote is, and one very important aspect of it is data. Yeah. I think we have to constantly realize that businesses have now moved into a real-time world of operating and a real-time world of feedback. And that may be on Twitter, that could be on any medium, but companies have to be receptive to that. So when it comes to knowing what our customer needs, when it comes to knowing that you deploy certain technological platforms, plus make sure that you have a organization efficiency across making sure that people understand that where the problems are and then solve them. Let me take just a small example of how we do it at Jio. At Jio, when we launch a new, say, network infrastructure, whether it be a tower, a small cell, or anything, we personally added to the software layer of that an AI and ML stack that actually tunes the antennas more towards where the traffic is getting originated
Where'd you get that idea from?
It's best practice. It's from data.
Okay.
But really, so that's how you keep on pushing the edge. That's how you keep on learning and keep on innovating to make sure that that pushes the edge. And then the most important thing that we do doggedly at Jio is really look at the facts and then try to change them.
Okay, so I think we've established the fact that companies are getting much better at keeping their ears on the ground and understanding where the voids are. Because entrepreneurship really comes out of filling out voids, so to speak. I'm just wondering what you have to say on different levels, and I'm going to start with Ashish on this in terms of talent, because talent is something that we throw out as a term that's quite regularly, but there is a big issue in terms of finding the right guys to do the right job, and especially at a time when you are using so much technology and things are leaping forward. What can you tell me about what your findings are there? Because this is going to be essential in taking us to the next level.
Sorry for being controversial.
You're not controversial. Cockroaches are not controversial.
I am Bangalore, but I have a problem hiring folks from IIMs and IITs.
Sorry, say that again?
I have a problem hiring people from IIM and IIT.
Okay.
Now we do have some folks from IIT finally.
Yeah.
And maybe one from IIM. But the thing is, they come with a chip on their shoulder with entitlement.
Entitlement.
Yes. First, it's campus recruitment, and it's about who's getting the highest salary.
Okay.
I can't afford it. You come and first prove yourself. But that nobody wants to do. So the point number one is build the right culture. We've built an incredible culture over the last 20 years in the organization, which attracts people, motivates people, but also keeps people within. To give you an example, I have a philosophy that Friday evenings and Monday mornings should be as exciting for everybody in the company. The day that equation changes, then you should get out.
Tell me about Monday mornings being exciting.
I'll tell you why. Because on Fridays, I give everybody beers, chip and dip and music. So they're all raring to come on Monday morning. I also run a Vedanta class every Tuesday, which is a free philosophy class. I also give free mediclaim to every employee, one spouse. If you have two, that's your problem.
Okay.
2 children and your parents. So it's up, down, and on the side.
Okay.
I have a food program that I run in the company.
Sure.
That people below a certain salary pay only a part of that, and we subsidize it for the guys that.
But how are you finding the right guys to incentivize?
No,
to stay
first
in these
is about
companies?
keeping the guys that you have.
Okay.
Everybody wants new talent, but what about the guys about skill development?
Sure. Great
about
point.
rotating the people within. Why not give them the ability to punch far above their weight? I'll give you a real example. My entire warehousing, where we have 500 events a month, which have more than 5,000 people, where you need turnstiles, you need to lay optic cables, you need handhelds, EDC machines. Something goes wrong, 5,000 kids screaming at the gates trying to enter can go terribly wrong. The guy who runs this entire warehousing and inventory management for me used to be an office boy in the company. His name is Sanjay Asilwal.
Okay.
For the last 4 years, he does this, but he's been trained to do this. And so it's about, of course, getting and attracting fresh talent, but that comes from word of mouth and culture. Today, Book My Show is a brand. People recognize it, but it's also the culture that we built. And that's how you attract talent, retain and keep talent. It's not about throwing higher amounts of money and giving ESOPs, because then you're building mercenaries. The guy will come to you for 1 year and he's on to another job.
Akash, you want to come in on that? Talent? Because it's interesting what he's saying. On one hand, yes, of course, you create that work culture. And I'm harping on this because it actually is going to be essential in terms of ensuring that all these great ideas you guys have come together in terms of execution. I mean, AI is AI and tech is tech and clouds are cloud, but you need people, right? So what do you have to say? Besides the fact that you guys are an incredibly sexy, wonderful brand and everybody is very excited about you.
Me and Ashish don't agree to a lot of things of the recent times, but I wholeheartedly agree with him on this, what he's just said. I think it's really about, when it comes to hiring talent, and especially talent that is under 35 at the youth age, you have to make sure that the proposition is good enough for them to see that they're impacting people's lives. If they don't, if at least my generation don't impact people's lives, they're not going to be job satisfied.
Okay.
So first is to create a culture around that. And then second, when it comes to really talking about hiring talents and having the right mix, I think it comes hand in hand with your company culture and your company ladder. It should not be that a person who joins immediately is a leader of a group, but what about the other 5 members of that group? At Jio, we believe in very, very small groups to execute large tasks. But you need to look at a succession plan and when I mean succession plan, not a follow-on plan, but what happens to the lowest developer? Where's his role going to be 5 years in the company? And we actively practice that. I think it's more about having a very sensible ladder for people to grow and aspire to grow into those roles. And then when you have a gap in your organization, which you believe that you have to do, is always to innovate yourself to say that this is the problem that I'm going to solve and how many people can solve that problem. And when it really comes to style, then what Ashish is talking about is, I think at all big companies that are achieving millions of user in acquisition and all of that, you have to learn an entrepreneurship style. It has to be, and that is at the core of everything. And if people can't come to your company and expand on their ideas and give the freedom to do that, then you're not going to achieve these great heights.
So those are some key internals that one really has to focus on. Now, in terms of projection of what a company stands for, I mean, words such as USP, branding, sharing, and what is it called, experience economy, where everybody's sort of all constantly sort of showing the image of what they do, right? I mean, this Instagram economy, well, everything you want to talk about. I just want to understand how all of you, in different ways, are going to be projecting your brand, and what is it that you're going to be pushing out there as, I'm not asking for your social media plan, but I'm trying to really understand how you are adapting yourself to what is really the advertising, so to speak, and also the kind of credibility your customers have in terms of having a match between what you project and what you deliver. Any of you can start. Mustafa, you can start. Ashish, why don't you go? Anyone?
ID brand is all about the right product, in the right packaging, in the right merchandise. I think that's the only thing that we did, and we continue doing it consistently every time. And we stay true to the brand promise. And the consistent delivery is helping us to retain our customers. As I mentioned earlier, we stay away from limelight. We ensure that the homemakers get the credit for what he or she cooks at home. And thereby, we sort of act as a professional assistant to a homemaker, rather than replacing the role of a homemaker.
Okay. And that's something that you're showing through your branding as well.
Yes. So if you now look at what in future for this, right? Our grandparents used to eat idli. I had idli today. I think our grandchildren will eat idli. So it's a sustainable business model.
How many of us are going to go have some really nice idli and vada after this session? But anyway, Ashish, what are you going to say on that? I mean, basically, I'm trying to say, I keep seeing this whole thing now, and I would say that I'm part of that generation that's seen the shift in advertising, the shift in the way we are looking at brands. What do you have to say about this whole experience?
Let me come before Ashish. Others, the audience is going to think that I'm only repeating his points. No, for me, brand is very simple. It's the user experience you give to the user. It's no more about advertising. It's no more creating an image of your company or how you portray your company. When you're giving services to the customer, your brand relates to that, and it should be. And your brand elements, the core guidelines that you have your brand have to reflect in every service that you give your customer. And then, of course, you work to inform the customer through communication and all of that there's this new service out there. But when it really comes to disseminating our brand, it should start and end at user experience.
Okay, so that's an interesting point. He's basically saying that, look, you can look really wonderful, but This is the way it has to be experienced. And that goes back to the whole issue of the ecosystem that I was talking about. How the best businesses seem to be creating an ecosystem, and eventually you're going to be actually looking at perhaps the profits coming out, not from that core business, but the kind of other trajectories it's taken. If I was to ask you how that's going to work out for you in the future, Ashish, what are you going to say?
Firstly, I completely agree with
Yeah.
Akash as well as Mustafa. So the theme is consistent, that most advertising professionals just lost their jobs today because there's the three of us, because you really don't need advertising. If your product is phenomenal, you can deliver at scale with consistency. That's all that matters today, because we're in a new economy where people can reach out very quickly through word of mouth.
Right.
And therefore, with Book My Show, while all the tamasha is happening on stage and the technicals are done, what we are really focused is in the trenches. Are the consumers entering properly through turnstiles? Are the mojos proper? Are there enough machines for women and men to be checked when they enter? Is the line for men more because we had done half and half security checks for women and men? And are there more kids coming who are boys for a concert, and therefore you need to have 80% of the lines for them? Sending up drones just to check the data, sending up drones to see mapping and heat mapping of clusters. Are they clustered around a certain bar? It's about delivery of consistency at scale at that level with detailing, not about the show that's happening. And we certainly don't advertise. All my competition out advertises me 10x. I don't advertise. I hardly spend. You've not seen an ad of Book My Show on television, but we still deliver at scale. The other is listening to the voice of the consumer. Most of us, at least Akash's business and mine, not so much Mustafa's, is that I can't hear the voice of the consumer.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
He's
come to.
anonymous to me because he or she comes online, this kid comes and buys, and if he has a poor experience. Most people try to save costs. I save costs on airlines and hotels. I do not save costs on customer experience. Okay. I don't outsource my customer care center. I have my own captive customer care center with 240 people, which have the best office in our organization, not mine. They get a great office because they're dealing with negativity all the time. My NPS has gone from 31 to 59 in the last 2.5 years.
So, but listen,
I'll give you small examples. One last point. We do simple common sense things. We put a mirror in front of every customer care agent. The reason is he has to remember to smile when he looks at himself in the mirror, because the consumer can hear the smile.
Can you smile for me right now when you're saying that?
I will. So it's during FIFA and IPL, what we do is we divide the floor into competing.
So you're doing that, but listen, I mean, you're growing at a large pace here, okay? And you've talked about listening to the voice of the consumer. And the reason I'm harping on this point is because initially we used to think this part of business discussions was the softer part. Actually, that's really the narrative that's changed now that we're all very well connected in terms of, you can kill a brand. 50 friends can get together and start killing a brand on Twitter, if they want to. That's the kind of competition you're dealing with right now. So how are you actually going to be looking at the next inflection point when it comes to business? And I'm going to ask you this because you've been talking about 2017 being this big sort of leap year when it came to AI and tech and everything else. This at the same time is coinciding with the time when you have more and more vocal consumers, you've got a much more demanding base. Of course, the way one would ask you about competition is very different from the way I would ask somebody else. Jio has a very different strategy. Tell me what you think are the next kind of moving parts in this whole business environment that you're looking at.
So traditionally, I think, let me start off by saying that the big tectonic shift that I see happening, that we see during Reliance to when it comes to Jio, is really to be a real-time company. And let me expand on that. When I talk about a real-time company, it's to say really what is happening on the ground. What is the efficiencies that we have in our organization that are catering to that? What is it that we achieve and track that progress day by day? I don't think traditional businesses have worked like that, whether it be in the internet space or whether it be in industry spaces. I think that's a huge tectonic shift that we'll see. And technologies like AI and whatnot I spoke about in my speech is only going to help that. I think there'll be two mass implementations of technology. One is the new rapid growing technology of, everyone talks about these invisible devices, projection devices, flexible displays, and all of that. But the second is how technology will get adopted and these internet platforms will get adopted within existing industries. And I think that inflection point is now. I think we can always speak about the coming technologies, and then the mass implementation of those technologies is completely two different things.
So all of this is happening at the same time. I mean, there's a lot of movement that's happening.
What is happening now is that the use cases that these technology companies are building now is at a global scale.
Okay.
So me sitting here and in today's world, a developer at Jio can contribute to an open source platform that someone is driving at a startup in America. And that platform is going to be accessible to all stratas of society or industry.
Okay.
And that inflection point is now. What is also happening is that in the last, not now, but in the last 5 or 10 years, that technology companies have also enabled themselves to solve real human problems and connect humans more.
Okay.
See the rise of social media for that example.
Yeah.
10 years ago, it did not exist. Today, social media exists, and the common theme would have been that social media is going to destroy jobs. But is it destroying jobs today? It's the #1 hiring industry in the world, the tech industry.
Yes.
So that's the way I look at it.
So, Mustafa, I want to come to you on this as well. I mean, just because we're talking about mass-scale technology as well as these disruptive initiatives, tell me from where you're seeing this. Basically, I'm asking about how you are going to be seeing your business or businesses such as yours that are really built from on-the-ground innovation and on-the-ground common sense solutions, which, of course, then become applicable to a larger audience. How are you seeing things growing on that level?
So Fatima, if you look at idli batter business,
Yeah.
there is no rocket science in it.
I didn't come up with it, so
Almost zero entry barrier,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We started this whole business with 50,000 rupees investment. But then we used common sense to mitigate the risks. Let's look at vada as an example, right? If you look at it, it's a century-old problem. The toughest thing for a vada is to get a hole for the center. Even if I give you awesome vada, Indians will not eat vada without a hole. So it's extremely important for us to solve it. So we identified it as an opportunity. We had guts to solve it, and we used common sense to solve it. And this is what we continue doing every time. We have been talking about technology, right? Technology is not just mobile apps and internets.
Yeah.
Technology is more. If you look
Solutions.
if you look at ID, the most important aspect of the batter is the wet grinding technology that we use. And the traditional wet grinders that you see in the market will grind 3 kg of dal per hour. And today I grind close to around 20,000 kg of rice and dal per hour. Now you can imagine the number of grinders that I would need on the floor. We looked at various options. There was nothing available in India for the heavy duty wet grinding in a hygienic manner. So we had to go to Germany.
No, I understand that. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know what you've done, and I know how you've solved it, okay?
Yep.
But this is a time when people are moving businesses very quickly.
Yep.
And you need to keep up with that. Even if you've done something, you've specialized, and you've done a great thing, and there's great credibility in your brand, I'm asking you as a business, how are you going to be dealing with this time when people are going to be more demanding? They will have quicker things to say. You'll have more guys trying to copycat you. I mean, you remind me of a 3D printer, actually.
Yeah.
3D printer of, I mean, I don't know if
Yeah, so that's
I'm
what
imagining that.
That's what we did.
So now what? How do you get to the next level? Because here we're looking at an economy that's going to be moving faster, and on the level that you're innovating, there's a lot of opportunity there. So what's your sort of take on that?
So we'll be soon innovating a 3D printing of dosa. Now that's good. We're working on it already. But keeping that aside, I think with the technology, smartphones, IT, consumers will start demanding more. They will look at transparency in your execution. So the way we look at the whole business is we have nothing to hide.
Nothing to hide.
We have nothing to hide. So we plan to put up our factory online very soon. That's the kind of demand customers will come up with for any businesses. And
Okay.
especially when it comes to food, it's even tougher.
Okay. So far we've talked about talent, we've talked about innovation, we've talked about how branding is changing in terms of how basically experience is really more than how good you look. I want to talk about something that that's becoming an increasingly larger discourse when it comes to how companies are being evaluated. And I want you each to come in on this. All this conversation around governance and ethics that are becoming, I must be honest with you, I don't think, perhaps many, many years ago, corporate governance or, the ethical debates that we're seeing right now was something that were being built into brand sustainability. And that is something that is happening, and one cannot ignore it. Some of the biggest brands are actually starting to suffer. Things that we thought would never happen have happened on the back of some serious lapses. I'm going to go to Ashish first on this, because I'd like to go to a company like yours that's expanding rapidly, that's very much in the news. You're getting your funding. I know you've talked about, indigestion versus digestion. Tell me where all of this keeping checks and balances is going to figure in terms of a company, and where that figures in your branding as well.
It has to start from the top.
Yeah.
And if you have double standards where you behave a certain way but you expect other people to behave a certain way, it is not going to cut it. And I also think you've got to set higher goals for yourself in the cultural DNA of the company to actually make a lot of, it shouldn't even be a question. It's one of your core values. So I'll give you another example. What we did is I'm not religious and I don't want to take a philosophy or a religious class here, but Krishna's discourse to Arjuna on the battlefield of Mahabharata was really about good versus evil. And it was really about Krishna being a cheat. He kept the sun up, he told him the weak spot of Karuna, he did all of the things which were not by the book. But the intent was clear, the action was clear, the action was wrong, but the end goal was clear. We do the same at Book My Show. I started a charity called Book a Smile. Basically, it's Times New Roman, gray font, 6 is the font number, and it's not an opt-in but an opt-out. 80% of my consumers miss that 1 rupee a ticket when they're buying a ticket, and I collect 10 crores a year. But all of that goes back to charity. We support 300 girls in Jharkhand for a soccer program.
Okay.
6 of them went for the UEFA 1 level coaching to Real Sociedad. And so, when you change the complete conversation, where it's no more about isko khilao, isko pilao, business at any extent, business at any level, but you change the conversation within. That you'll be right by the book, you'll be right by your fans, your customers, and your vendors and partners, you'll be right by your shareholders, you'll be right by the employees, but at the end of the day, you'll be right by society. The millennials today are asking that you don't create your wealth, create a halo at the age of 60, 65, and then start giving back. You draw from society, create value for yourself, and give back while you're building your business. And when you have that conversation, things like ethics and being straight-jacketed or building a business a certain way, just completely diminish.
That's a really interesting point you're making, because in fact, Mustafa, you did something really cool during the Chennai floods.
Yeah.
I think you had a choice between doubling your prices and sort of taking the opportunity of the kind of shortages there were. But on the other hand, I think you went on to actually just sort of put out free truckloads of food and supplies. I mean, just tell us a little bit more about that and what made you do that, because you could have also just raised your margin a little bit and made an opportunity out of it.
So you could actually use the opportunity in 2 ways. You could use the opportunity to charge a super premium and make a lot of money. You could use the opportunity to do or support the needy at that time. When Chennai was hit with bad floods in December 2015, Chennai's were missing their favorite idli dosa. I eat idli dosa 3 times in a week. Chennai's eat idli dosa 5 times a day. So imagine their plight. It's extremely difficult. And with floods across, no electricity, no clean water, it was extremely difficult for them it was almost impossible for them to eat their favorite idli dosa. At that time, we were probably the only company in the world who could have supported Chennaites to eat idli and dosa in such a large scale.
Sure.
So we stopped supplies in Bangalore, sent the truckloads of batter all the way.
What happened after that?
Sorry?
What happened after that? When things calmed down, what is it that came back to
So-
you as a brand after that happened?
So we did that, and we partnered with NGOs and supplied batter or cooked idli and dosas to the Chennaites. We went back after that, nothing.
Yeah.
So then it was business as usual.
Okay, so basically we're talking about how
But
companies
if you look at that from a pure business perspective, it was a classical opportunity to make a lot of profit.
That's exactly what I was saying.
If I could have actually sold batter at 10 times the price. Chennai's would
No,
have.
that's why I'm honing on this point. We're running out of time. We have exactly 45 seconds. After this, besides being a good person and a good entrepreneur, what is it that you think your company learned from that experience?
So if you look at ID, we exist for a purpose. And we hire people to serve that purpose. And our purpose of existence is fighting a war against preservatives in the food.
Against what?
Against preservatives in the food, chemicals and preservatives in the food. And we hire talent to fight that war.
Okay. All right. So I just want to, we're wrapping up this panel right now. I know we've had to really go through some pretty generic points, but my entire objective as the moderator was to really bring out the kind of diversity of scale I have, as well as your goals that you have on this panel. I just want to say that one of the most important learnings for me in this conversation was how each of these businesses are really dealing with their idea of what is their demographic at the moment, as well as the kind of factors that are really going to make a difference now in the economy going forward. I mean, we've talked about how branding has changed. We've talked about how the whole idea of ethics is changing, as well as the whole customer experience is changing. Just one thing I'm going to ask Akash, what are you really excited about in going into the next, because you have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. A lot is really said to you about that. What are you really excited about going forward? And really, personally, if you had to take a journey by yourself on something, what would it be? I'm going to close on that note.
I think the thing that excites us the most is, and going back to be repetitive earlier, is that what can we do to impact 1.3 billion lives? And that story has just begun. India's just seen the launch of services that can impact so many people at a mass scale. And that's the most exciting part of what we do personally and what we do at Jio. I think at the end of it, if you don't put out a service that changes people's lives for the good, then it's not going to be exciting.
All right, well, our time is up, but the opportunities are plenty, and there's a lot to look forward to with these sort of entrepreneurs in this country. Thank you for being a fabulous audience. And a big thank you for being such a great bunch of panelists. And I just want to take a special second to thank Nirmala, who actually brought me in to be a moderator on this. Thank you very much to this entire community.
Sure.
Can I have Akash's memento, please?
Oh God, I bet, can I start?
Yeah.
Mustafa. And Ashish. Thank you. Fatima, we will give you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Akash, Mustafa, and Ashish. Thank you very much.